Hello, welcome to another video, and this one's looking at a few interesting exercises that can be quite helpful for trying to correct some asymmetries that we'd see typical with lateral pelvic tilt and postural deviations on one side of the body causing a lot of compensation. Now, firstly, these exercises are quite advanced, so it wouldn't be something that I would start with. I would have done a lot of easier things leading up to this, but this would be where I'm at that point where I'm trying to integrate everything again to get it to move as it's meant to. So this first exercise we'll just have a look at first is just basic lunge, really, like a forward lunge where we're alternating. And as you can easily see here, we've got like the kettlebell on the shoulder on one side and then by the hip on the other side. So the beauty of this is that you're basically playing around with gravity and how it interacts with how it will want to playing with the joints of the body. So as you can see here, this kettlebell is dying to be, or both of them are dying to be brought to the ground, but this one more so is basically sped up because it's getting closer to it. So it's obviously going to pull this shoulder down a little bit, and this glute on this side is really, and along with the entire leg, but the glute and the quads are really working massively here to prevent or decelerate the body so he doesn't collapse forward, right? So you've got back extensors at the back there that you can't see, but really the powerhouse of it is the leg here. Little things like foot stability involved, as they always are, but the main thing here is that this dumbbell going this way, but we have on the opposite side, this is where something interesting is going on, is that this is basically being prepared for an overhead pushing movement. So just the fact that his body is preparing to it's basically trying to push it up because it's resisting the pull of gravity down. So we've got one that is more or less being encouraged to go down and the other one going in the opposite direction. All right, so you can see how this is quite helpful if we're trying to correct an asymmetry that might be working in that side. All right, and obviously everything going on around the pelvis, so you can't really have this falling out, which is what we see with suitcase carries and that normally. All right, so then we obviously get to reverse it and we do the opposite side. And you'll notice that we'll change the dumbbell, so you'll see how we'll have that carrying side on the ipsilateral side and the overhead one will be on the contralateral side. So the ipsilateral is basically right arm, right leg. All right, and then we've got this contralateral feeling of this one pushing away, because this is where the unbalanced side, which is this trailing leg, really can start to fail through the core and the QL. And obviously if there's depressed shoulders, it's really weakness throughout here. We'll see this lateral shoulder sway sort of thing, is what you see in single leg stance. All right, so we're more or less using the two kettlebells in opposing actions to create symmetry. All right, so it's trying to create good stiffness through opposing directions. That's why it can be quite a handy. It's, as I said at the beginning, though, they're quite advanced exercises, so not something you would start with someone on their first day. You're trying to correct things, but after you've done a lot of things with simpler movements, it might be something that you could add in that might make all the difference. All right, so that's the basic lunge movement that I could do it as a backward lunge, which would be even easier. Now, once I've done that, this again leads to farmer's walks or suitcase carries. And this is where we're basically doing a suitcase carry, but again, adding this extra stiffness of the overhead arm. So this is quite a handy for the person who really struggles with the suitcase carry to maintain good stiffness throughout their core when they're walking. All right, so it's, even though it's actually harder, it actually does provide them with better stability through the hip just from that opposing action. All right, and you'll see it a little bit better from this rear view. You can see how this shoulder, so if we had a depressed shoulder on this side, for example, because say for example his lateral pelvic tilt is collapsing down on this right side, you can see how this actually now is helping to overcome that. All right, now on the stance leg, this leg here is going to be the one that's challenged the most because of this dumbbell or this kettlebell. So the glute on this side is really going to have to fight with this quite hard to prevent this shifting out to the side here and then collapsing downward there. And obviously with each step he takes it changes, and when we changed direction it was the same thing. Alright, so quite unique exercises, quite advanced in many regards, but can be very useful if used wisely around other exercises, and obviously this links quite well into the walking pattern itself. You'd want to rule out any shoulder problems before doing overhead things as well. So, but you know, like I said, if you use it wisely, it can be quite helpful. All right, so we'll look at one more, which is a bit of a regression of these two. We've looked at this one before, but it is very similar in that it has this opposing direction activity to it. All right, so let's have a look at that. All right, so this is the other exercise, which is basically a cable push and pull. So we've got like opposing directions. So very rarely can you do things that are working in opposite directions at the same time. All right, so this is quite a handy way to really build in a solid base through the legs here of you know, in that lunge stance again. So in this split stance, you know, really creating really good solid base. In this particular one, he can't move too much. He just has to stay really still on all of people often feel this mainly in the core, even though it looks like an arm exercise, but it's the fact the core's getting sort of wrenched, really twisted in a big way, but it can't be, it's resisting the rotation, not actually trying to encourage it. The more advanced version is when we add the weight shift, which feels a lot more athletic, obviously gets a lot more leg movement involved, so we can get a little bit more work through the hips and the core, so you've got this lateral lunge type feeling into it. And just this opposing directional movement, so the push and the pull, really just brings in this great symmetry through the core, and probably not quite to the same degree as the overhead things that we just looked at, but can be a good regression, like I said at the start, and you know, a great way to sort of lead into those more advanced ones. And if you're using things around it carefully, can be a great way to eventually make everything work like as it's meant to, with good harmony and good flow, you know, in integrated movements. All right, so there's a few ideas you can use to help you in your training if you suffer with lateral pelvic issues or just postural asymmetries, more or less, and help you to even them out and make them basically the same on both sides. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that, and see you on the next one.